Hello again, it's Mr. Pete, your interweb shop teacher, and this is episode number 96B, the answer portion of my What Is It Mystery Tool Mystery Item series. So thank you for participating. We had about 70 comments, not a whole lot really, but I don't think anyone got this item, or maybe there was one or two. The other ones were fairly easy. Believe it or not, I can't believe how many people got this one correct because it's very obscure. Let's begin. Number one is interesting, even though there's the name Pan American will mean nothing to you. The 10 by 60 will mean a lot to you printers out there because this in fact is a piece of furniture. Yeah, furniture. Furniture that is used in the letterpress printing trade, pretty much obsolete, and most often these were made of wood in many different sizes, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute here. But the 10 by 60 is means 10 picas by 60 picas long. Now the reason I'm showing this is that even though it's not a parallel, well, it is a parallel, but it's not, I don't have a pair of them. So these are very handy to be used on the milling machine or some other place where you need a parallel. And I might have shown this in a video a long time ago. This is also a piece of metal furniture, and it's 12 by 18 picas. This is a printer's rule. It's got inches on the top and then picas and points. So you guys that are familiar with printing and type and all that, you know what points are already, but picas are a unit of measurement, and there are 6 picas per inch. So it's a pica is 1/6 of an inch. Makes no sense, does it? Anyway, that's what picas mean. Raise your hand if you knew that. Okay, here is how furniture is used by the letterpress man. So the frame here in black, iron or steel frame, is called the chase, and they lock up the type. This is the type. Within that chase, whether it needs to be in the center or whatever, and all of the spacing blocks out here are what is called furniture. In this case, they're wood, but often they were metal as well. And then it's all locked together under pressure with what we call coins, spelled with a Q. There's a coin right there and a coin right there. That puts tremendous force and holds the type in place. So that's what the furniture is all about. Who cares? Okay, here's number 2, and I had this taped, but it's a Stanley butt marker. What's a butt? A butt is a hinge. So there's the original little packet, and I thought these were obsolete, but a lot of people said, no, you can still buy these. So I guess you can. And what is the purpose? When you're installing a door or whatever with a hinge, if you have to have the correct size. They made these in many different sizes, and this is a bit of a cutting edge around here. So this is the same. This is a 3.5 marker, and this hinge is 3.5. Let me see if I can demonstrate. So pretending that this is the door or the door jamb, and notice that there's a little stop right here and here, so it would just be placed. It had to be located very accurately, of course, and then you would strike it right here without striking your thumb. And can you see the impression that it made right there? And then, of course, you skilled carpenters or cabinet makers would take a sharp Stanley chisel and chisel that out and inlet the hinge. So that's what that's all about. It's really just a marker, and it delineates where the hinge has to be inlet. All right, now nowadays they're not using too many of these square-cornered butts or hinges. They use a rounded one so that can all be done at the factory with a round router cutter, so we don't need a square corner, which is a bit of a nightmare to make. So I just went out to my garage and I took a picture and just a short video clip of the more modern hinges that you probably are used to. All right, I sure beat number 2 to death. The Stanley tool is no longer necessary or needed because in modern factories with modern hinges, they're using the rounded corners, and that can easily be inlet with routers. Kind of interesting to note that there's a piece of wood, apparently Baltic birch, it says Finland on the end, and that holds the butt in place, because this is probably put into the carpenter's pocket and doesn't want to cut his pocket or whatever, so it's just a handy little way to carry it. Most everyone knew that this was a tool for siding, and the Malco is the brand, SL5, I think that means siding. Anyway, vinyl siding, when you're coming up to the last row with the last course, up into your eave or whatever it is, often you have to cut the top of the siding off, and that removes those little dimples or clips that hold it together. So you simply use this on vinyl siding to make that little indentation, or I'm not sure what you call it, but anyways, it's a vinyl siding tool. Probably about $20. Okay, number 4, and quite a few people knew what this was or is, and it really surprised me because the man that loaned this to me had no idea what it was. He actually called Starrett in Massachusetts, and they had no clue. Finally, there's a patent number on here, so they looked it up with a patent number, because this was made for only about 1 year, and that was in 1933. It only appeared in the Starrett catalog one time in that year, 33, and it was more like a supplement in the middle, and I do have a poor copy of that to show you in just a minute. But this is a Starrett number 652 cylinder and hole alignment gauge, so you can measure the taper in a cylinder bore. That's really what it was made. It's an automotive tool. I suspect that it was a failure, and that's why it was only around for 1 year, because we typically use other tools to determine that, indicators and so on. But let me show you with the tin can here the general idea of what this does. Notice that this straight edge here swings, and that's almost like a little protractor there, and it's measuring in taper in inches per foot. One space equals 2 thousandths. So years ago, I suppose those soft cast iron engines wore into a taper, and they were measuring that to determine if they needed to overhaul the engine. I looked and looked for a decent cylinder. All I came up with, well, Folgers can, but anyway, this spring-loaded thing would go up against the edge of the cylinder, and of course this would rest on the top of the cylinder head, and that would be the straight edge brought up against the cylinder wall, and then you could determine how much taper there was. So that's what it does. Let me show you that 1933 picture out of the Starrett catalog. I'll put a still picture of this at the end of the video, or you can pause your video now to read the text right here. And there's a picture of a man. That's not my hand, it's too young. But anyway, this is the insert from the center of that 1933 catalog. Now I'm going to zoom in on these two pictures. Now it will not be very clear as I close in, but you might get something out of it. Here it is. I don't believe you'll be able to read it, but in general, start with a picture here, and then I'll go to the other picture here in just a second. Again, I'll have stills of these pictures at the end. And this is a pretty good picture off to the left of what it actually does. And maybe you can read this, or maybe you aren't interested. Anyway, that's what item number 4 is, and I'm really glad to solve the problem, and now I have to return that tool to the gunsmith that loaned it to me. Okay, that concludes episode number 96B, the answer of my What Is It series. Do not send me any more tools, because I am bowing out of this. You can see that there's very few people watching it, so it just isn't worth it, but I do have probably about 10 items left, so there'll be several more episodes in the future. And I have 16 or 1800 other videos. If you want to watch them, just search tubalcain or Mr. Pete 222 on Google and they will all pop up for you. This is Mr. Pete saying thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.